Welcome back to V8 Creative and part 56 of the Ultima RS build, and on this episode we're fitting the induction system. Yes, welcome back to the D-Den and another all-day pass. And on this episode, we're in the engine bay yet again. That 6.2 litre V8 is getting so close to its first start. But today's focus will be breathing. Yes, how are we going to get air into the beast? The air filter, the mass airflow sensor, the induction plenum, well, all these parts come from Ultima, and I'm going to show you how they all fit exquisitely to the rear of this car. So all that's left to do is let's get our spanners out and just start spannering. Induction. Not a topic you hear a lot about, really. You hear about fueling and trying to get bigger fuel lines and more fuel into the engine and bigger injectors, but all that is a complete waste of time if you can't get enough air in the engine, because there is an optimum ratio of air to fuel to make it burn. And actually it's 14.7 to 1. Don't ask me why I know that, but I do. And on the RS, Ultima provide an induction kit which ensures lots and lots of cold air gets into the engine. And this kit comes in two parts. So to start with, you clearly need an air filter. And yep, K&N, huge cone air filter to try and introduce as least resistance as possible. Then from the air filter, before you get to the throttle body, you need a MAF tube. MAF, mass air flow. And what this does is this reads how much air is being sucked into the engine, because this little sensor that sits in there has a connector which then feeds the ECU. So if you can imagine that ECU, that brain, it is saying, how much air am I sucking in? What is the throttle position? What is the crank position? And then from all that, plus a few other things, it can then determine how and when it wants to fire ignition and how long it wants to open the injectors, how much fuel. So air filter, the MAF, which is then connected with a tube on to the throttle body, and the throttle body is a large butterfly which is operated by a small motor which uses fly-by-wire off of the throttle pedal. Anyway, so that is the basic induction system, as I would call it. An additional upgrade, and of course I've gone for it, is to ensure the air that comes into this air filter is as cold as possible, because this air filter sits right in the middle of the exhaust, which is not ideal, is it? So what Ultima have done is they come up with this ingenious idea of how to connect the roof scoop to the air filter. So when you're going along, the cold air that comes in above the windscreen goes straight into the engine. How's that done? Well, there are several parts to the kit. Firstly, there's this enclosure. And as you can probably guess, what this enclosure does is it holds the air filter. And what happens is the other part of the kit, bear with me, it's a bit dusty, is this. Look at it. See if you can see it. There you go. And what this does is this is bonded to the inside of the rear canopy. And then when it comes down, this is a bit difficult, what it does is it seats onto the enclosure. It's a lot easier to see it when I install it. Is this takes the air from the scoop and directs it straight into the engine. Okay, let's unwrap this induction kit mounting bracket. So we have, okay. So we have this bracket made of aluminium. Now this bracket is different for every type of gearbox. So Ultima will know which gearbox you're fitting so they can supply the correct bracket. This is trim piece that goes around the hole in this for the MAF tube to go through. And then here we have some stainless steel nuts and bolts. So what I did is to match the throttle body to the rest of the engine and gearbox. I just removed it, just 4 bolts, and then gave it a quick spray with aluminium engine lacquer. So I'll just take off the masking. So this is the mating edge. So this is what you don't want to paint. You want to keep that raw aluminium. And as you can see inside, there's the butterfly. I also had to mask off the loom connection, like so. And then this, I'll take it off once it's on the car. Right, let's go and put it on. Now these bolts weren't done up to a high torque. I'm just going to nip them up and then look at the Chevrolet Performance website to get the correct torque setting to finish them off. Nip them up, not too tight. Now we fitted the bracket, the enclosure sits up against that bracket, and the height of this needs to be correct to seal onto the intake plenum once that clamshell is closed. Now clearly I haven't got the clamshell on, however I did a lot of measurements before I took it off, so I pretty much know where it's going to be. So I'm just probably going to drill the holes and give it a little bit of adjustment so it can be tweaked when we put it all back together. So what we've got to do now is the MAF tube needs to go through this hole, connect onto here using the flexi, and then there is a mass airflow sensor that sits here, and the loom connection for it is here, mass air. So it goes this side. Okay, so let me get the MAF tube. Let me take this off. Now clearly Ultima provided this over length, so it needs trimming. But I don't want to do that just yet. So the best thing to do now is space up the enclosure, rig it up so I know roughly where it goes, which I think is about like that. I'll just put something down there. Sensors there. So I just need to cut that tube, I'd say 4.5 centimeters, because you need a slight gap here. 4.5 centimeters. So here we have the mass airflow sensor, and here's the opening here for the air that's being drawn into the engine. So this has to go towards the air filter, so it goes in like so. And we push this in. It's a snug fit. Now we have the MAF inserted. What we're going to do is just pop in these couple of small bolts. Just pull it in so it sits in the centre of the tube. And it's all done. Right, let's go and pop it on the car. So what I want to do now is just rig up what this is actually going to look like. Because what I'm trying to do is trying to get this pretty much in the right position. So if I just put this on like this, now this inside the roof like this. Pretty much probably big enough. I'm just looking. It's very good. It actually makes an airtight seal. So I think I need to drill those holes in the back of this. It needs to be level, which it is. Looking good. Induction system in place. Not fully tightened yet because I'm going to take it off to give me more access in this area to put the gearbox breathing system in, which we're going to do next. Now, as you could see, when I rigged the plenum up, there is scope there for a slight bit of variance when we actually put the rear clamshell on, but that's not a problem because all it is these two holes in the back of this enclosure that I can just slightly slot if I just need to maneuver it very slightly, which isn't a big deal. Now, let's go over to the workbench and let's just unpack that gearbox breathing kit. The breather. And two hoses with the unions and also copper washers to go onto the gearbox. Now this little beastie needs to be mounted in a particular place out of the way of the induction system. So let's go over to the car and figure out where everything is going to go. So what I need to do is make up a small bracket to connect this to this. And I've got some angled aluminium to do that. And then on the gearbox, I'll show you in a minute where the two hoses go. go. Okay, I'll just protect the chassis before I put the clamp on. Yeah, I know this is a woodworking clamp, but it's very useful. Right, let's take that off. So what I've done is I've bonded this right angle aluminium piece onto the chassis member. Yep, and there we have it, induction system complete, gearbox breather system complete, and the list of outstanding jobs is really reducing rapidly. Now, for you hardcore fans out there that want more footage, I'm going to put in some extra bits of me now fitting that exhaust for the final time and adding paste to the couple of those joints. So keep tuned if you're one of my loyal fans, but if not, this is going to be the part of the episode I'm going to say bye, and as I always say, keep smiling, keep spannering, and maybe, just maybe, next episode we'll fire her up. Welcome back to the Dean Den for you spannering fans out there. What you can see me doing here is adding the silencer box bracket to the rear of the chassis. Now, as I've marked the position of two holes, which I'm going to drill now. And what happens in those 2 holes, I'll be inserting riv nuts, countersunk riv nuts, so they're flush. And then the 2 right angle brackets, which you can see in the back of the shop there, will be bolted in place. Now you see me opening the hole out here, and this is always worth doing before you start drilling lots of big holes, just checking that riv nut fits, which it does. Now the holes are drilled, let's take the masking tape off. Always like showing this, it's very satisfying removing masking tape. And then we're going to just countersink those 2 holes to allow the riv nuts to be flush. Now, what you can see here is my riv nut tool. Now I've had loads of people asking about this, and it's made by a company called Memfast. I think I've had this for the best part of 10 years. And this sort of riv nut tool is used in the aerospace industry actually. And what I like about it is so much more controlled than using the scissor type, like the pot riveter type. The thing is though, you've got a lot of pressure on there with the using the spanner, so you just got to be careful not to pull the threads out. But after a few times you get used to it. Practice makes perfect, as they say. Right, so the 2 riv nuts are now in place, and now let's bolt on those 2 right angle brackets that are supplied by Ultima in the fitting kit and pre-drilled. And what I'm just doing there is just countersinking the bottom of them and bolting them in place with stainless steel bolts. What I do here to make sure they don't come loose is I use spring washers and normal washers on each. Again, be careful not to over tighten because those aluminium threads in those riv nuts can be pulled. Now you can see here I'm putting on that rear stainless steel bracket, and it's attached with 2 rubber bobbins. Now this is really important because those rubber bobbins ensure that the exhaust system can flex when that 6.2 litre V8 is under high torque, and you'll see it moving in the chassis. Again, stainless steel spring washers and nuts. Front and rear. And what this does is it provides a nice bit of flex. So just demonstrate it there. Nice little design that. Right, now this is the final system installed, and what I mean by that is I have applied exhaust paste to the inside of that 4:1 collector. You can't see it there, but basically I've made sure every single square millimetre is covered. Not too much, but not too little. There's a bit of a knack. Now I'm putting in stainless steel bolts with spring washers there, and quite interestingly, Ultima provide 2 lengths in the exhaust kit. One is 25mm and one is 30mm, the bolts. Now for the engine side on these headers, it's the 25mm bolts, and the 30mm are used when putting on the cats, which you'll see in a minute. Now what is nice about these headers is you can get access to the nuts pretty easily. There's just one which you've got to use a spanner on. The other ones you can use a socket. There, you saw me there trying, I couldn't get to it. So you can imagine if you ever need to do any work on the engine, take the rear clamshell off, you've got all this access. It's really good. Now I'm pushing the 4-in-1 collector into place, and now putting on the cat. Now, this made me laugh. This is when I needed stubby spanners, because these 13mm spanners are just too long. I'll put them on my Christmas list for next year, but I did do it in the end. But you can't get a socket in there because it's too close to the exhaust and the cat. Anyway, I've put in a couple of minutes of this so you can smile at me. Now I'm doing the bottom side of the cat, and again, access isn't a lot easier down there. And there's my Sky remote control. I've probably got a film on in the background to keep me amused. I just love working on this car. It's not like restoring a car where you've got old parts which you have to get rid of the rust. This is all, everything is brand new. Now here, this is a pretty poor shot, but it's tight in there. And what I'm doing is I'm tightening up the little clamp bolts on the 4-to-1 collector. This threaded hole here is for the lambda sensor. Just popping it in. These are supplied by Ultima as well and matched to the ECU. The threads are nice and clean and they're just going very easily. There's a crush washer there to ensure this is an airtight seal, which is essential for the system to work properly. And then I'll get a big spanner and nip it up pretty hard actually. All done, and that's repeated on the other side of course. And now I'm just rigging up the tailpipes here. Now interestingly, even though this is a mild steel exhaust system which is ceramic coated, these tailpipes are made from polished stainless steel. Do they look good? And the clamps provided are stainless steel clamps which are lovely. And there you go. I'll just leave you with a few flyover shots with my indoor drone. Right, that's fine.